going on, guys? Snake Guys here, playing some more Dark Souls 2, and in this video is going to show you how Infusion works. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to split this up into two parts. The main reason being is because there's actually a lot of technical stuff that goes into what I'm about to explain right now, and it's going to be a lot easier for me to take my time in explaining each individual one in their own detail, so that way you guys can go ahead and understand it right from the get-go. And also because when I get into explaining these things, I'm going to take my time. I'm not going to rush through it, and I would rather put out two fairly decent in length videos that are really detailed on each attribute or each infusion than one fast one and there's still questions that need to be answered. So I'm going to try to answer as many questions that you guys might be having, but if you guys still have a question, y'all can leave them in the comments and I'll help you out. But before we get into it, really, there are a couple things that you guys need to know right now if you don't know already. Basically, the way that these things work is each weapon has scaling and each weapon has a requirement. Right now I'm using my black steel katana, and this is actually a very good weapon for dex people. And as you can see right here, it requires 14 strength and 25 dexterity. It only has one scaling, and that scaling is an S scaling. That's the best you're going to get on any weapon. That's why I say it's really good for dex people, because people are going to level dexterity and they're going to get the best benefit of that. Now, you might get confused and you see attribute bonus strength underneath the actual attribute of strength, and these two go hand in hand. So obviously with dexterity, if I need a 25 dexterity, but when I go above it, I will get an S scaling in that. That doesn't necessarily apply for all of these. Right here is intelligence. Right underneath it is magic. And if that has a certain scaling, if magic, let's just say for argument's sake, has a C scaling in magic, then when you have a certain amount of intelligence, after you go above that required amount, it starts scaling and you get a bonus attack from that. Now, where it gets a little tricky is that faith is the same thing, but underneath it is fire. Now, fire has, as it says right there, an influence of faith and intelligence. So they kind of messed that up right there, because fire gets its scaling from both of these stats, from faith and intelligence. So if you have decent stats in that, then you'll get a combined scaling on that. So that's it's a little confusing. What they should have done is probably put lightning underneath faith, because lightning is only associated with faith. If you want to boost your lightning damage, you have to level your faith. That's the only way that it's going to get a boost. Dark is the same thing as fire. It bases off of faith and intelligence together. So whatever those two add up to be in their own little hidden multiplier will equal up to the bonus that you're going to get for dark and for fire. So make sure you keep that in mind. Just because it's underneath it does not mean that that's exactly what it scales with, and that alone. So now that we went ahead and covered that, I'm also going to cover one other thing about shields. And again, if you know about this already, fast forward if you want, but I'm going over this because a lot of people need to know. Now with shields, there are a lot of damage reductions on shields. As soon as I can get into it, basically I can't go right there. So basically, if you look up on the second column, the first one on the top, it looks like there's a sword hitting a shield. Now right next to it, you see it in blue, is 100. Actually right here, let me see. Perfect. Okay, so right there you see the 100. That's the amount of damage that it's going to reduce, and that's in percentages. So obviously if it's at 100%, then that means it's going to absorb 100% of physical damage. Now right here you have magic, fire, lightning, dark, poison, bleed, petrification, curse, stability, and durability, and then also weight, but that's irrelevant. Basically, you see these percentages and they're not at 100. So that means when you fight somebody For example, the Smelter Demon, when he stabs himself with that sword and it becomes a flame sword, if you block his attacks, you do not get 100% damage in physical. Well, actually, let me go ahead and backstep real quick. You do get 100% physical when he hits you, but you also got to keep in mind that he has fire on his weapon, and as you can see right here, I can only block 69% of fire damage. So that means 30% of fire damage is gonna hit through and it's gonna do its damage. The physical is gonna get blocked all the way. The fire will not. Now that's gonna play into all the stuff that we're gonna go into right now about infusion, and we're only gonna cover half of these infusions, and then we're gonna cover the other half in the next video. But right here, this is the only man, McDuff is the only man that you can go to infuse your weapons. I have a guide out for completing his side quest. You can look at that. You can look around for that if you want. But if you already gotten to that point where you're ready to infuse some stuff, we're going to go ahead and jump into it right now. We're also going to use my black steel katana as reference because it's a lot easier to absorb the knowledge that I'm about to tell you, because it only has one scaling, and that's the dexterity scaling. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to cover magic first. And basically what magic does, well, right off the bat, all of these except for raw lower your base damage. Raw and magic. These two do not lower your base damage, and raw actually increases your base damage, but I'll go over that later. But the rest of these lower your base damage, but you trade that out to get a bonus in another type of damage. Now we're going to start off with magic, and as you can see, if you see that B that's underneath intelligence, that means that whatever intelligence level you're at the moment, it will get a B scaling. It doesn't matter. Obviously, the black steel katana didn't require any type of intelligence to wield it in the first place, so it's going to go off of what you already have. I have a 3, so I'm not going to benefit from that. The only thing that would benefit me is the magic damage, which is at 74, but it will not scale that high because I don't have the intelligence to scale it. So that's also something that you need to note about that as well. If you have high intelligence and you want to kind of do something with that, then this might be the route you want to go. But also take note that these things can either help you or put you worse off. And what I mean by that is I'm going to go into fire right now. Fire actually scales. It gets a B scaling in fire, which is based off of your faith and your intelligence. And I also get to keep my S scaling in dexterity. But we're going to talk more about fire right now, where if you fight, I guess, more humanoid people with flesh, you're going to do your base damage of 138 plus your fire damage of 74 plus the amount of intelligence and faith that you have combined that equals up to the bonus that you're going to get in your fire. But where it will help you is if you fight regular enemies that don't have a lot of armor, that are weak against fire, you're going to get another multiplier on top of that because they're already weak to fire. Now where this would screw you over is, say we go back to the Smelter Demon and you want to use this against him. It's obviously not going to do much on him because he is fire. Fire does not weaken him. He actually absorbs most fire damage. So you're not going to get 74 extra damage on top of that, and you're not going to get much scaling on that neither. But not only that, you just weakened your overall base damage. But then not only that, and it's a lot of information, I know, so that's why I'm trying to talk really slow, but not only that, the base damage of 138 also gets cut down because armored enemies do not can take slash attacks. You know, if you use swords and all that good stuff on armored enemies, you're not going to be doing your maximum damage. If you use blunt weapons, then you will get your max damage because that actually hurts them, just like it would with skeletons. You get more damage when you use blunt weapons on a skeleton than you would on a slash or a thrust or any other type of weapon. The reason that you don't really see that too much is because your weapons will have high base damages, so that kind of evens itself out. But with fire, it increases with intelligence and with faith, and I also get to keep my S scaling and dexterity, so that's something that you may or may not want to put some points in depending. All of these infusions are very situational, so depending on what you're trying to do is mainly where you're going to want to do infusion. So the next one that we're going to cover is lightning. Now, as you can see, lightning has a B scaling, so that means it's only going to scale with faith, since that's the only way that you're going to scale lightning damage. And as you can see, it's the same deal, cuts your base damage, also gives you added damage on lightning, but if you have a high faith, then you're going to get a bonus from that as well. You're going to get a B scaling, which a B scaling is not too bad, and lightning is actually not a bad infusion that you might want to go with. But again, it's very situational. That's all on you. If it fits your needs, then that's something you want to go with, because a B scaling is actually not that bad compared to some of the other scalings that you're going to be getting. You actually get B scalings on all of these. But the next one we're going to cover is dark. Dark actually increases, it gets a B scaling, and it increases with intelligence and faith as well. It also adds the dark damage, and then same deal, your base damage gets lowered, you get your added dark damage, but this time it's going to get combined with your total faith and intelligence. So that's something that you want to think about. Poison is the same deal, but this is something that you might get a little confused, because as you can see, there's not an added scaling anywhere else. I still get to keep my S scaling in dexterity, but I get poison damage now and my base damage is lowered. Well, that's because scaling your dexterity and leveling your dexterity actually buffs your poison damage. It also does that with bleed. So if you have high dexterity and you're using a weapon that also has a scaling like this, like poison and bleed would be a pretty good infusion I would want to do with this katana, because I have high dexterity. So not only do I have high dexterity and it's going to give me a high multiplier with the base damage, but it's going to give me an equally high multiplier with the poison base damage. So like I said, that's something that really ties in well with dexterity builds. But poison, a lot of these enemies either take too long to get poisoned, or they're all poison resistant. Like all the people in Harvest Valley, good luck poisoning them, because they're living in poison. So that's something, like I said, again, it's very situational. That's gonna wrap up these 5 infusions. Stick tuned for part 2 if you want. If you think you got it now, then I'd like to thank you guys for watching, and if you enjoyed, leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. But if you still want to learn more about the other 5 that are on the bottom, stick tuned for part 2, which is coming out pretty soon. And until then, I'll see you next time.